Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, my mic was muted, but we'd like to welcome you to the virtual public meeting for Colony Loop Drive. We hope you enjoyed the slideshow. We wanted to give you guys a little glimpse of what you're going to be seeing later this evening. On behalf of the project team, we'd like to welcome you. This project is actually a support by the Corridor Mobility Program Office, the Austin Transportation Department, and the Economic Development Department. But before we get started, for those of you who are joining us who do speak Spanish, we do have Spanish support services provided by BCO Translation Services. So we're going to go ahead and bring Jacqueline onto the screen. Good evening, Jacqueline. I know yours is muted too. Getting ready.
Buenas noches a todos. Queríamos dejarles saber que tenemos servicios de interpretación disponibles para ustedes. Vamos a estar poniéndolo abajo, el número de teléfono. Aquí está el 512-831-7858 y el número de la conferencia es el 487-518-915. Por favor, marquen ese número y ahí vamos a estar ofreciéndolos los servicios de interpretación de la conferencia en español. Gracias, bienvenidos.
Gracias, Jacqueline.
De nada.
Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to share with everybody a little bit about the agenda tonight, let you know what you're going to be previewing. So to get started, we're going to be introducing the project team. We're also going to be going over a little bit of the history of project and an overview just to give you a sense of what we've been working on. We're also going to be sharing a little bit about the community involvement that's been taking place on this project. We're also going to be talking about safety and connectivity goals we've had for this particular project. And then we're going to be covering all the proposed improvements, and these are some of the renderings that you just saw. So at this time, we're going to be bringing on the project team and do a formal introduction. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
So we're going to go ahead and get started and introduce, and I do want to acknowledge one of our colleagues who is working behind the scenes hard for us. He's helping with the interpretation services, but I do want to acknowledge the project director for the Colony Park Sustainable Community Initiative, Martin Barrera, from the Economic Development Department. So we'll go ahead and start with our first presenter, which is Christine Frendel. And Christine, your mic's muted too.
Sure is. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Frendel, and I'm a project manager with the Redevelopment Division of the City of Austin Economic Development Department. The Economic Development Department oversees implementation of the Colony Park Sustainable Community Master Plan and is a partnering department for the Colony Loop Drive project.
Thank you, Christine. And now Sho.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shobana Angia, and I'm a project manager with Public Works Department, City of Austin. I am representing Corridor Program Office on this Colony Loop Drive project. Welcome, everyone.
And now Laura.
Thank you, Dr. Cortez. Good evening, everyone. My name's Laura Deerenfield. I'm a division manager with the Austin Transportation Department. Delighted to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the safety and connectivity goals for this project.
Thank you, Laura. And Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Busey, and I'm with the Corridor Program Office, a project sponsor. I work with the Corridor Mobility Program on the communications and outreach team as a public information specialist. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. And then our wonderful team from Dunaway Associates.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Candace Craig. I'm a senior project manager with Dunaway Associates, managing the project's design. Thank you.
And I'm Laura Toops. I am part of the Dunaway Civil Engineering and Project Management team working with Candace. And so I'm going to kick us off on the content. And first, I just want to say, I want to welcome everyone here. I've actually been involved in your neighborhood and in the Colony Park Sustainable Communities Initiative since 2013, which also was Dr. Cortez's involvement in the project. And so I'm very disappointed to not see everyone in person today. But I am really thankful that we have a platform like this and our engagement team putting together something where we can reach out to you and give you this detail and get your feedback. So welcome. And where we're going to start first, we're going to have a little bit of an overview of the history, which started with the master plan, and then how that actually has led into this specific project, Colony Loop Drive, the 60% plans that we're talking with you today on. So to present that overview will be Christine Frundle from the Economic Development Department. Christine? And I think you're muted.
You know, eventually we'll get this, right? Thank you, Laura. I'd like to provide some context for how today's meeting fits into the larger, now 8-year planning process to develop the 208-acre city-owned property that is adjacent to Turner Roberts Recreation Center into a vibrant, walkable, and sustainable community. Next slide, please. In 2012, the City of Austin was awarded a $3 million grant from the Housing and Urban Development Department. With that grant, the City of Austin partnered with the Colony Park, Lakeside, and LBJ neighborhoods to create a vision for how development on the 208 acres could serve as a catalyst for not only the adjacent existing communities, but also the surrounding 5 census tracts. In 2014, that vision was adopted by the Austin City Council through the Colony Park Sustainable Community Master Plan. This vision identified the connection of the Lakeside neighborhood to the Colony Park neighborhood, as well as the Turner Roberts Recreation Center and Volma Elementary School, by completing the missing section of roadway between Decker Lane and Loyola Lane. Efforts have been underway to design this missing section since 2014. In 2016, additional funding was provided through the city's Corridor Mobility Program to study the existing sections of Colony Loop Drive and to provide complete street improvements in line with those proposed for the missing section of roadway. The Colony Loop Drive project from Loyola Lane to Decker Lane is critical to providing connectivity between existing neighborhoods and future development in and around the 208-acre Colony Park Sustainable Community site. The Colony Park Sustainable Community Initiative is being built on a foundation of community-led support and is being crafted through strategic partnerships aimed at realizing the vision laid out in the Colony Park Sustainable Community Master Plan. The Colony Loop Drive project represents one of these many partnerships and is a focused effort between the Corridor Mobility Program, Economic Development, and Austin Transportation Departments. I want to thank everyone again for joining us this evening. We are grateful for your continued support in helping us realize the Colony Park Sustainable Community Vision.
Thank you, Christine. So the next slide. So from that higher level overview, let's come back to our specific project. As Christine mentioned, it was the 2016 bond program which funded this project. And at that time, a couple of years ago, Dunaway Associates was hired by the City of Austin to do first a preliminary look at the existing sections of Colony Loop Drive. And we worked with the Transportation Department and other departments to see what sort of improvements that we could do to these existing sections. And today we're here to show you the 60% proposed improvements. And as already been mentioned, this is really important to connect the two streets with the future, what we call the gap section. And I will show that in a slide coming up, but that will be designed and constructed as a part of the 208 acres. And this connectivity is important not only to just your existing neighborhoods of Colony Park and Lakeside, but there's all the visitors that come to Overton Elementary, Turner Roberts Rec Center, and the Colony Park District Park, current and the future park, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. Next slide, please. So this graphic shows you what's happening in the area. So one of the really great things that has come out of the focus and the work in your neighborhood and in the greater neighborhood surrounding this area is a focus on improvements that support this region. So what this graphic shows you, in the middle in orange is Colony Park. So it's the 208 acres surrounded by existing neighborhoods. And then what you see in sort of the burgundy color are other residential neighborhoods, some which have been around for a while. And then there's some like Parker Station, which has recently been constructed and is to the north of this area. Agave neighborhood, which has existing development and is currently doing some current expansions. The other thing this shows right in the center of the map is, of course, the large Walter E. Long Park, which has an adopted master plan by the City of Austin and future improvements planned for that park as well. And then finally, let's point out, you'll see sort of a squiggly green line, which is the existing rail line that comes through this neighborhood. And then what's important about that is Capital Metro's proposed green line, which is a future rail line. And the recent bond item was approved for the design of this project. So there is also anticipated a possible stop in the Colony Park neighborhood. Next slide, please. What's our why? And some of you on this call have probably been involved for a long time. Some may be new, but what you're seeing in front of you is a slide which shows the 8 pillars of need that the community, your community, developed. And what these 8 pillars do is they are a guiding force for your consultant teams and for the City of Austin, Travis County, to focus on what sort of projects, what kind of services will address the needs of this community. And I think they're really important. So I'm just going to read the titles, but it's food access, economic vitality, healthcare services, education, mobility, connectivity, and safety, affordable workforce housing, open spaces and activate parks, and city and county resources. So what you'll see in these 8, today we're here to focus on the mobility, connectivity, and safety, because your neighborhood has said, we want to create new roadways, paths, bikeways, and improve connections to nearby neighborhoods. This project, the Colony Loop Drive project, directly addresses this pillar. The next slide, please. So what this graphic shows you, it sort of hones in on the immediate area. And what you see in red are roadway connections, and in green are pedestrian connections. So in the center, you see a segment of Colony. So Colony Loop Drive is connected from the lower Loyola Lane to Decker. That orange section is the missing section. We refer to that as the gap. And that piece is being designed and permitted as a part of the 208 master plan piece. This is when you drive, of course, to the end, to the school, where the road ends. So that there's a design for this section. And that was planned as a part of the master plan. So after the master plan adopted, there was a focus to how do we improve connectivity in the neighborhood. So that's where this project, which is the western section through Colony Park neighborhood and the eastern section through Lakeside, became a project to design and plan improvements that would bring it more into the same street section as that future section will be. A dedicated bike lane, trying to enhance bus stops and landscape and safety wherever we could. The green trails that you see will be pedestrian ways and can be bikeways as well for recreational bikes, but those will go through the 208 acres and connect to the existing neighborhoods. You also see in the center, there's a screened out area, but there's a plan. Well, that's the school, the rec center, and the park. And so you should be aware that we had a phase 1 of park improvements that opened in the spring. But at the lower part of that graphic, what you're seeing is a future Colony Park, District Park swim center. And that is approved for design and funding. The consultants are being finalized with their contracts this month, and design work will start on that in January. And finally, what this also shows at the top is that possible future stop for the rail line, the green line that we saw in the previous slide. That could be a stop at the future 208 acre development. And also there's a dashed arrow. There's also underway focus, can we find a way to have a road connection across the rail line that could eventually go to Johnny Morris Road? So again, we wanted to take this opportunity to share with you these sort of regional, sub-regional improvements in the area. But now we'll come back and focus on our immediate project, Colony Loop. So the next slide, please. So next, we're going to have a discussion of safety and connectivity goals. The Transportation Department will talk about what they use, what data they use to help advise how do we improve safety on this. So Laura Darenfield will be presenting. Laura, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you all for being a part of tonight's broadcast, and for anyone who's watching this after tonight. This section is talking a little bit about the safety and connectivity goals that really speak to those key pillars that Laura spoke of a moment ago. It's truly been a humbling and a great privilege to be a part of this team with so much from the community represented in this plan. As far as safety and connectivity, the goals here are really to make a safer street for everyone who uses Colony Loop Drive, to connect the Colony Loop Drive so that it can offer the access that it needs to for everyone, from Loyola Lane to Decker Lane, to, from, and within this beautiful existing and blossoming community. Along the way, it will be a street that can offer an all ages and abilities bicycle facility, which is to say it is a street that a child or someone just new to bicycling, or someone who might be a little unsure would feel comfortable being able to bike along this street to get where they need to go, whether that's to the store or to school or to a friend's house. Additionally, you'll see several locations where new pedestrian crossings are proposed to better access the existing and new assets that would come on through the Colony Park Sustainable Plan, to include the new park and many other amenities. And getting across the street also helps to calm the street and make it a residential street for everyone to safely use at all times of the day. And as I mentioned, the connections, both to not only Decker Lane and Loyola Lane, but also to all of the other residential connections throughout the community, as well as to the park and trails and other community assets. We can go to the next slide. The Transportation Department, in pursuing the goals of the Colony Loop Drive Complete Streets design, looked very critically at residential parking. This is an important function of any street, especially that that serves people that live and get to and from their homes. But it also needs to be a street that is safe enough for everyone to use, whether it's your child going to school or if you're biking to the store. And so we want to understand how we can best manage the important role of parking with the space that we have available, both on the existing sections of Colony Loop Drive as well as the new section, to maintain vehicle access, parking, and safety. So what we do is we study parking utilization at many different times of the day, days of the week, and both weekend and weekday. And we look at how much parking demand there is at those different times, appreciating that that can fluctuate depending on the day of the week or the time of day. In our analysis and looking at parking demand, we found that generally speaking, use of parking on the street is generally below 25%, with some areas upwards of 50% parking demand. And those areas are listed here: Wentworth Drive to Riverstone Drive and Ponsdale Lane to Fleet Ridge Drive. But even at a 50% utilization, you can modify the parking to maintain that important function of the street, but also be able to use the space to bring about some of the safety and connectivity goals that I mentioned. And so by modifying the parking to one side, you're then able to shorten the pedestrian crossings, calm the speeds, and offer that all ages and abilities bikeway. Also, parking remains throughout the community on side streets as well. So having access to abundant parking, but also offering a safer street will help to make the use of Colony Loop Drive comfortable for everyone. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so the connectivity and safety elements of the plan consist of a protected bicycle lane. This is pictured here in the photo, where there is physical protection for people who might be interested in bicycling but a bit concerned. And so that helps to offer a level of comfort and safety that invites more people to try biking short distances to where they need to go. It also allows for biking side by side, as a child and a parent might want to bike together, or if a spouse are walking together or biking together, there's ample space to do so. The pedestrian crossings that are also pictured here, the island that you see in the photo, has a lot of co-benefits in addition to making it a safer crossing. By breaking up the crossing into two stages, the person walking only has to really focus on crossing one side of the street first and then the other, which can help someone who might be walking a little bit slower, or a child who might be lower to the ground and the visibility is not quite as good as an adult to be able to cross the street. And we know from research that these crossing islands can reduce crashes by 40% because of those properties. Parking, as I mentioned, would remain on the north and west side of the street, except in some areas where the taper will allow for these new crossing islands to be offered to help get people across the street to the school and the park and other destinations. And altogether, these elements work with one another to help bring about a calmer and more comfortable street to drive along, reducing those motor vehicle speeds to more residential levels and eliminating the higher risk speeding that can happen without any cues to drivers to slow in a residential area, which is an important element as we connect Colony Loop Drive from one end to the other and create that connectivity. We want to maintain those residential speeds. And finally, Colony Loop Drive will be part of a much larger network. As Laura Toops mentioned, with the transit investments in the area, as well as the existing connectivity on Loyola Lane, Walnut Creek Trail, and the Walter E. Long Park trails, the investments here on Colony Loop Drive to make it a comfortable and safe place for everyone to use, whether you're driving, walking, biking, or waiting for the bus, it helps to connect to a much bigger network and get people to and from the city of Austin more comfortably with more options. And so I'm going to turn this over now to Candace Craig to talk a little bit more about the proposed improvements.
Thank you, Laura. So the purpose of the next series of slides is to show the location of the proposed improvements, renderings of each type of improvement, typical street sections, and a bird's eye view of part of the plan. So on this slide, you can see this is a map that shows the location of the proposed improvements. Don't worry if you don't know what some of these improvements look like. I'll show you pictures of each of these in the following slides. So first in the light orange is that gap section that Laura Tubes had talked about earlier on in the presentation. This is the connection of Colony Loop Drive. So you'll have continuous road from Loyola to Decker Lane. Next, along the east and south curb line is a two-way protected bikeway. Where you see the three red octagons at Ritchie, Wentworth, and a future intersection in the gap section are potential all-way stops. Next, where you see those little blue dots are the curb extensions, and they're sometimes called bulb outs. I'll show you some pictures of what that looks like in the next few slides after this. Where you see the larger blue circles are the pedestrian locations of the pedestrian refuge islands. These are at Shannon, Fleet Ridge, Sepal, the School Driveway, at East Meadow Bend and Riverstone. Again, I'll show you a few pictures of what that looks like in the next few slides. Lastly, the two pink circles near Loyola and Decker are covered bus stops and bus boarding islands. So next slide. So the next few slides are examples of what these roadway improvements look like. So this first one, this is a rendering of the Refuge Island proposed at Colony Loop Drive in Sepal. The people that you see walking across the crosswalk are heading east toward the new pedestrian bridge to the new park that opened this year in March. The Refuge Islands, I'm going to repeat some of the things that Laura had said, so bear with me. The Refuge Islands work by encouraging slower, safer speeds, and where you have people crossing the street. Pedestrians have a safe area in that curb island between traffic lanes and can cross one lane at a time. Next slide. So this one is a new refuge island over at Volma Overton Elementary. Same concept as the previous slide. Notice that the two-way bike lane is located on the school side to reduce conflicts with cars on the street. And there's a barrier curb that protects cyclists in the bikeway. Next slide. This is a rendering of an intersection with the protected bike lanes and curb extensions. You can see in this picture that the curb extends out in the parking lane to meet the traffic lane, and they shorten the distance from curb to curb that a pedestrian is in traffic. Next slide. Okay, this one is the bus boarding island that we talked about. So it has this is with a covered bus shelter. The benefit of a boarding island is that with a bikeway located behind the bus stop, when a bus stops and people are getting on and off the bus is not in the bikeway, and people on bikes will not need to merge into the traffic lane. This is a rendering of the one over at Decker Lane, near Decker Lane on Colony Loop. We also proposed one over at Loyola. Next slide. So on the picture on the left, you can see sidewalks on both sides of the street, two-way protected bike lanes along the east and south side of the street. So this is on the school side. Parking along the west and north side of the street. The picture on the right shows the street section at a refuge island. We will have 5 or 6 foot continuous sidewalks on both sides of the street. To make room for the refuge island, the traffic lane shifts into the parking lane. We'll see this from a bird's eye view in the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so this plan shows 2 blocks with a refuge island at Sepal and Colony Loop Drive. On the top of the page is east, so top is east. The arrow at the top of the page is the way to the new pedestrian bridge to the new park, school, and rec center. To the right is heading south toward Loyola. So starting at the left of this drawing, you can see Ritchie. You can see the curb extension in plan view. Again, curb extensions shorten the distance from curb to curb for pedestrians across the street. The block from Ritchie to Steeple is our typical block with 5 or 6 foot sidewalks on both sides. Along the curb line at the top is a two-way bikeway with a barrier curb so that it separates the bicyclists for the all ages and abilities cyclists from the car in the traffic lane. Then you have the 2 drive lanes and the parking lane along the west or north curb line at the bottom. And if you move along to the next block from Steeple to Townsboro Drive, we show the crosswalk with a refuge island. If you can imagine yourself driving from Ritchie toward Loyola, you'll shift to the right around the refuge island. Then you'll shift back into the typical lane location so that you can maintain some parking on that block. We do take up some of the parking lane to make room for the refuge island, and we do this to encourage drivers to slow down where people are walking. We did the best we can to maximize the parking without making the shift too abrupt. Based on the parking study that Laura Durenfield with the Transportation Department presented earlier, there should be enough on-street parking close by. If you recall in the map shown earlier, these are proposed at Shannon, Fleet Ridge, Steeple, the school driveway, the East Meadow Bend, and Riverstone. So that's all I have on this part of the presentation. Here we can go to the next slide, and I'll turn it back over to Laura Tubes and Laura Cortez.
Thank you, Candace. So, next steps. What happens now? So, tonight is about getting your feedback. It's about getting your questions, your observations. Again, as I've said, we are just at 60%. So the plan was to come to you with this presentation and then take that feedback and incorporate it, producing the next stage, which is 90% in the spring of 2021. So we will take this feedback. There might be some questions tonight, which we will reach out and individually answer, and we'll answer some tonight, but we will get back with you on that. So somewhere in April and May of 2021, we will post the 90% design, and we will bring that back to the community as well for you to be able to see what the stage, what could change, and what was incorporated. Then in the summer of 2021, the goal is to obtain the City of Austin permit. This is a construction permit. So this is what's needed to build the project. And this next point is, I say 2020, which is now because we've been working on it through 2023. It is a priority for the City of Austin to find construction funding for this project. We do not have the construction funds right now, but there has been concerted effort in different avenues on ways of finding this construction funding. And then to assure you that before construction begins, we will come back to the community. We will continually update you on the project, when the permit happens, and then of course, when construction funds are obtained, and then we'll come back out to the community and work with you about that schedule, about meeting the contractor, and moving forward. So we do ask, you see at the bottom, that you provide your input to us through December 18th. You can, we have an email address there, and I think Dr. Cortez will add a little bit of information on that, but we're taking the input tonight, and we'd like to have it by the 18th because we have a schedule that we have to stay on to respond to getting the construction documents moving along, and so that we can work on incorporating your feedback. So with that, Laura, Dr. Cortez, all the Lauras tonight.
All the Lauras tonight.
Yes. Dr. Cortez, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for everyone who's been joining us. As Laura has mentioned, some of you also follow our website, so that is a place where we're going to be putting up the presentation. We always like to also post any questions that were brought up today with the answers on behalf of the city, so we have been doing that. You can also find our information. The Colony Loop Drive has its own web page, you guys, at the Corridor Mobility Program Office website as well. So we're posting on both sides so you can be able to gather that information. So I think the exciting part next is to take questions, look at some comments that have been coming in. We know we have some folks that typically join us for these meetings, and we're also going to bring back on the entire team. So that way, if you have questions for different segments of the presentation that we've had. So we are now going to go ahead and open up for questions. And we know some of you have already been posting some comments. So we're going to go ahead and bring back Laura and Christine Frendel. All righty, let's see here. We have some comments about the swim center. Yes, this is coming. It is a very exciting thing. Miss Scott just commented right after. Yes, this is going to be starting the design phase, everyone. We're going to start doing public engagement for this in January 2021. So very excited. Thank you for commenting on that. It looks like also we have another comment that the park and the walking trails is something folks are looking forward to. We had somebody mentioned about that. Thank you. We're working hard on that. I think the main thing with this is as many of you have been following us for some time, since 2014 and 2012 when we put out the master plan, was we want this to be walkable. We want this for everyone to be able to move around this community. All righty. Other questions we have in here. We have Joseph. He'd love to ride his bike down his own street and not worry about people flying down at 50 miles or higher. I think Laura Deerenfield mentioned this in ways that they're trying to remedy the speeding down the Colony Loop Drive. Okay, and Miss Scott had a comment too, and I think we have that on here. She was asking about yard parking, and it looks like, do we want to have somebody take that here? It looks like we might have answered that, but let's share that with everybody else. We might have other viewers that are thinking the same thing as whether or not it's going to force them onto the yard.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cortez, and thank you, Ms. Scott, for the question. As was shared in the chat, the parking analysis was really meant to understand where the residential parking is used most. The intent is not to establish yard parking. That's, of course, not the outcome we're looking for, not the pillars that would speak to the pillars of the sustainable community plan. With that said, we do have to think about the street space that we have available and make sure that that parking is still plentiful and available, while we can also bring about the safety improvements that we shared and that Candace went through in detail with the street space available. So it's the trade-off that we can achieve by understanding where that parking is needed most and where those crossings can really facilitate getting to and from all of the community assets that are offered through the plan.
And, I might add, this kind of a project, when we do have a contractor on board and we have the construction dollars, we're going to need to do an outreach to all the people along the street. And I think that's an opportunity to work with them from the beginning about how the construction is going to occur, and that there are code violations about parking in your yard and such. So we could take that opportunity as well to help educate and build our information and what's possible with the folks actually along the route. So
thank you, ladies. I also see another question on here about, it looks like we did also address it, but just in case some of you are thinking about it, there, Rachel's mentioning a one-way stop at Colony Loop and Valleyfield, definitely needed there. And I think we acknowledge that, but I'd love for you guys to share what we stated on that one there.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cortez. As Candace shared, there's a number of locations we are studying for always stops. And certainly if there's areas that folks would like us to look at more closely as well, we'll be happy to take those into consideration. So we want to thank Rachel for that suggestion, and we'll look into that as we understand the always stop opportunities throughout the street, really to help assign right of way to the right person at the right time. That's really the point of stop signs, and in combination with all of the elements that we've discussed, help to bring about just a safer, more comfortable environment for everybody.
And Allie, hopefully we got to your question. We had Allie also comment on here. Laura had mentioned a little bit about the timeline and the completion. And as we get closer to those things, we're always keeping the community updated and posted. So if things move or change, we do our very best to keep you in the loop. And if you're not following or subscribed to our e-newsletter, where we do give updates on all of the things going on with the projects with the Colony Park Sustainable Community, I encourage you to do that. You can easily go to our website at colonypark.org, atx.org, and simply subscribe, and we'll keep you updated. But the timeline that we did propose that Laura shared is definitely where we are at this point. So we'll be coming back to you guys next year again. We also have another positive comment. Thank you, Veronica Castro de Barrera. She loves seeing the raised crosswalks to get to the bus stop. Thank you very much. It looks like we're heading in the right direction there with that comment. Alrighty. We also have someone mentioned that they just bought in Parker Station and they're very excited about the changes that are coming. Tara, thank you. We're excited. We ask you to stay involved with this project. There's so many new things coming. We're excited about people that are moving there, but more importantly, just so you can stay involved and give us your feedback. Okay, we have another question from Allie. She is asking, do you believe the planned Tesla factory will impact plans in any way? Anyone want to take that question? It's a larger development question.
You know, I'll take a stab. You know, I think, and I haven't really looked at how far away it is. Our focus with the Colony Park Sustainable Communities Initiative was a 5 census tract area. So we were looking at from 290 to 130, 183 to 130, excuse me, and 290 down to 969. Am I right? Sometimes these numbers, yes, 969. And the focus is about getting employment and education and services in that immediate area. So I would just say Tesla is great. I don't know that it changes anything from my point of view on what we're doing, because our focus continues to be on our immediate area, those 5 census tracts. So, and Christine, I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I think you hit the nail on the head, that the 208 acres that the Colony Loop Drive runs through is really meant to be an anchor and catalyst for the 5 census tract area. Although we always welcome economic development on the east side, and we hope that that can have some synergy with how the vision for the Colony Park Sustainable Community was adopted in the master plan.
Okay, we're just going to keep an eye. Is there any other comments or questions that anyone that's tuning in want to share? Looks like some neighbors are getting able to meet each other. Great. We're excited that you guys are all here. Well, with that said, we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We are always trying new things. We hope even if you have feedback about this presentation and what things that you enjoyed about it, we hope we made it entertaining for you. We hope you saw some new things and a vision that's coming to your community that fits your needs. As Laura mentioned again, we're going to be taking your feedback, so please reach out to us. There's a couple of weeks that we're going to be providing for you to do that. If we see any other questions that come up in any other ways, we will reach out to you individually. But again, we just want to thank you for joining us. We're wishing everybody a safe and happy holiday. And again, we're just delighted that you are here with us tonight. So thank you again for everyone who tuned in. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.